What's up, guys? I am Mike Muhammad, and today I decided to take a break from watching Tim Rogers' 10 best games of the decade to actually give some of my thoughts now on Pokemon Sword and Shield. I would call this a review, but it's not quite that, so it's kind of a review. Well, you know what? It just is a review. Let's just call it a review. Because really, I doubt that my opinion on Pokemon Sword and Shield is likely to change. Like, just to let you guys know, like, I was watching Tim Rogers' 10 best games of the decade, and I always just love listening to this guy talk about stuff. This guy just has a great way of explaining his thoughts, explaining his rationale for things. It's so that, like, when he says his top 10 games of the decade, I could make a video like that myself. Maybe I will. But, like, I'll probably disagree with most of his picks for the top 10 games of the decade, but at the same time, I'll have respect for his opinion because most likely because it's Tim Rogers, he will probably explain it in a way where you can see it from his point of view, you can see the rationale, and you can respect it. And I hope to offer something like that in my opinions on Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I think my review is best summarized as it's almost as fun as playing Pokken. It's almost as fun as Pokken. And let me explain what I mean by that. I'm someone who grew up in that first generation of Pokemon. I was like the primed age. I was like 7, 8 years old. The primed age for Pokemon obsession when the franchise came to North America. I live in Canada. I don't know, some of you guys might not know that, but yeah, like when Pokemon came here, it was just a fucking obsession. You know, I was trading cards with people on the streets. You know, you were playing at school. You'd be playing Game Boy, trading Pokemon, doing battles and shit in the middle of the road. It was a different time, man. It was like kids actually outside playing together, playing fucking video games together and shit. Like it was a different fucking era. Somewhere along the line, all that shit changed, man. But yeah, I was part of that first generation, and to be completely honest, I think I have at least tried every single Pokemon generation up to this one. Although some I've definitely been more of a fan of than others. Red and Blue was obviously classic as hell. Gold and Silver was also fucking amazing. I think it was better than Red and Blue personally. It was my favorite generation at that time. I think Pokemon Black and White had a lot of great ideas. It had a really compelling story, which is so rare for a Pokemon game. It was actually pretty interesting to follow the story of that game. A lot of great Pokemon designs in that version as well. And yeah, like for me, X and Y was pretty good. I don't think it was as good as Black and White, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the graphical jump from the DS to the 3DS. Um, yeah, Ruby and Sapphire was like a point where I kind of fell out of interest in the series. I think I only played Diamond and Pearl for a short while before I decided to sell it. Uh, I think again the same was true with Sun and Moon. I just wasn't a big fan of those generations. Sun and Moon ended up trading it for Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, which ended up being a way more fun game to me than Pokemon Sun and Moon was. So, you know, I had a mixed bag of feelings going into this new Pokemon. And the reason why I point out Pokken, I've played all these different side games, all these different spin-off games. We had the TCG Game Boy game as kids. We had the Pokemon Pinball, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Rumble. We had spin-off games for days back when we were kids, man. These new kids don't know. These young kids these days, they don't know about that shit, man. We had spin-off games for days when we were fucking kids. And we had good spin-off games, too. Like, why has there not been a new Pokemon Snap? You know, like, Pokemon trading card game, I'm cool with it, you know? Somehow we never got it again. But man, like, Pokken, I remember buying this as one of the first games I bought for my Nintendo Switch. And I've seen this game get such a negative rap from the actual Pokemon community because they fucking suck at fighting games or action games in general, I guess. And just a bad rap from Nintendo fans because, again, If it's not Smash Brothers, they just don't fucking get it. But, Pokken was made by the same creators of Tekken, the developers over there. I'm not sure if Harada was directly involved, but it was by the Tekken developers, and it was a great game. It was a fun game. It had a lot of great Pokemon. The best graphics in a Pokemon game ever. Like, very good sound design. All the Pokemon sound like they should sound. And it's a very fun, fast-paced, action-y game. It's a lot of fun. And I had to admit, playing Pokken, I found it more fun than playing a lot of these Pokemon RPGs, which, I've always found myself after a while kind of tiring of the turn-based, just throwing Pokeballs, just like tight matchups, select the move that this Pokemon's weak against. After a while, it got a little bit stale for me. I started preferring stuff like Shin Megami Tensei, Persona, like, started trying like more Atlas games, like just different JRPGs rather than to just go back to Pokemon, and ended up finding them more fulfilling. So, for me, it was like if I had to rank the Pokemon games, it's like Gold and Silver in third place, Pokemon Black and White in second place, and then Pokken as the greatest fucking Pokemon game of all time. Because nothing else I ever played was more fun to me than Pokken. And that's just kind of how it was. And I thought the graphics and the sound design and everything of Pokken was fucking great. I still hope Pokken gets a sequel. But yeah, going into this Pokemon Sword and Shield, I had to say I was very skeptical. Pokemon Let's Go was a game that I thought brought a lot of interesting ideas to the table in terms of overworld Pokemon, in terms of things like gaining experience through catching Pokemon, things like all the team always leveling up together, experience share being kind of a built-in thing. There was a lot of things about Pokemon Let's Go that I thought were good in terms of streamlining the whole experience of playing Pokemon and putting the focus on just catching your Pokemon and training them to be stronger and then having fun battling them. So, I thought Let's Go had a good few ideas, but like, just throwing Pokeballs to catch them, game felt a bit too easy. But I gotta say, Pokemon Sword and Shield took a lot of good ideas from Pokemon Let's Go. And I'm happy to say that I think at this point it's the best Pokemon RPG in the game in the series. It's better than Black and White. It's taken ideas like overworld Pokemon. It's made the gym battles much more exciting. I like how the soundtrack sounds as if the audience starts singing, kind of like they do at these British and UK European sports events. It kind of actually works for me. It makes it seem like the Pokemon battle is a big sports event. There's a more seriousness to the whole gym challenge thing. I think a lot of the characters have personality. And those are the positive things. But the reason I had like such negative impressions of this game at first was because certain things like no voice acting for human characters. I really think it's time that we had voice acting in a Pokemon game. I really feel like that would add an element, just a dimensionality to it. Dragon Quest has voice acting for all these characters. Game Freak could fucking do this. They just don't want to waste the time and money hiring people to do it because they know you'll buy the fucking game anyways. I really think it's time that Pokemon had voice acting. It would be really great if we could get some voice acting for more than just the Pokemon in these games, for the human characters as well. For that aspect of the world to come to life. Like, it would feel more like the anime as a fucking game. Like, for me, when I think of like the first console Pokemon game, what I always wanted was as a kid was I kind of just wanted a game that made me feel like I was living in the world of the anime. Like just very bright world, just interesting characters that have voices, like always wanted to get that feeling. And I still feel like Pokemon Sword and Shield, while it does a lot right, it still kind of falls short of that. And I think a big part of it is the graphics in this game and the presentation and the lack of voice acting. I think these all detract from the games. We have the power of a home console now. Game Freak can do better. They're just choosing not to because they know that people are going to buy the games anyways. So that's really my one big caveat with this game. I really feel like just certain things could have been improved. I really wish that this game had Pokemon following you around. Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee had Pokemon following you around. I think you could have the Eevee or the Pikachu as well as one of your Pokemon that you caught. And every Pokemon that you caught, you could walk outside with them. And if you had like Charizard, you would fly around on his back and stuff. It was pretty cool. I I'm like, why couldn't we do that in this game? That seems like it would add like an element that would make you enjoy the game more and make you feel more immersed and make you more fond of these Pokemon. You know, growing fond of the Pokemon is an important thing. I'm glad that there's this Pokemon camp thing. That's a cool idea of like kind of camping together with different trainers and all the Pokemon playing together and having these kind of interactions with the Pokemon. It's cool. It adds a level of intimacy to the Pokemon. Always feel like Pokemon games, you should feel like you really care about these Pokemon. Like they're not just tools for you to get to the end of the game. You know, you want to feel some attachment to your Noibat or your whatever Pokemon you picked. I really like the starter Pokemon in this game: Scorbunny, Grookey, and Sobble. Team Inteleon, where are we at? Inteleon Bros, what's good? Snipe Shot in your direction. Like, seriously, I think this Poke generation had quite a few good Pokemon designs. The soundtrack is really keynote in this game. The soundtrack has some really nice bass guitar work, has some really like thumping like electronic music. I enjoy the like I find myself just humming some of the soundtrack music in this game, like just when I'm away from it pretty much because it got stuck in my head. So yeah, like the soundtrack is great. Graphics are decent, could be improved. Things like the overworld, Dynamax I think is cool, Gigantamax and all that. I think it's interesting. It adds a layer where the gym battles and stuff feel more intense. It feels like you've got to strategize around using the Dynamax or the Gigantamax because you know that the gym leader will use these tactics against you. But you know, at the core of it, it's still a Pokemon game. If you enjoy Pokemon games significantly in any kind of way, if you have at some point in your life enjoyed this series and you think you still would enjoy that Pokemon experience, yeah, you're going to enjoy Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's like a solid, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It has its problems, it has its things that could be improved, but overall, I'm having fun. I want to finish the game. I want to play through it. And if I'm interested enough and having enough fun to want to complete a game, that's usually, you know, the game has fulfilled its goal. You know what I mean? Like, at least I would give it, like, at the barest of minimum, a game that maintains my attention and makes me feel like I'm having a good time playing it, at least a 7 out of 10. But, you know, Pokemon, I'll give it those bonus points because I do think the world of Pokemon just always has this charm to it. Even though I've said, the world has a lot of just the wild area is great. Having 3D control of your character is an excellent aspect of this game that should have been a part of the series for a very long time. It was definitely missing. Um, Things like just being able to explore this world at your own pace. Things like being able to, when you're at level 30 with your Pokemon, to suddenly encounter like a level 60 Pokemon and be like, oh fuck, I'm not catching this Gengar tonight. We gotta run now. Like, though, just that happening like in the early hours of the game and stuff like that is something I like. I like the fact that we're able to just have those kind of experiences. It makes it really feel more like an adventure when there's actually moments where you gotta think and doesn't just feel like you're just stomping through the fucking game constantly. Like, if you actually have to strategize, if you actually have to think a little bit, that's a really good sign. That for me makes the game fun. That keeps me as an adult who's been fond of this series and plays it casually, that keeps me invested to know that there's some challenge. When there's no challenge or it just feels like the world is uninteresting, that's when I lose interest. That's why I sold Sun and Moon and like Pokemon Diamond when I had it back in the day. Like it just I feel like I enjoy the world of Pokemon Sword and Shield. I feel like I'm going to enjoy the rest of my adventure through the game. And I think in like 15 hours, I've made up my mind that I enjoy this game. I think it's great. I think you should give it a chance. If you have at any point in time enjoyed Pokemon games, will it be the best game in the series for you? Possibly, it might be. I think there's a lot of Pokemon from every generation kind of curated here. I personally don't care about the whole Dexit thing. There's a lot of different Pokemon, like kind of like the favorites of every generation. The most memorable Pokemon of every generation have mostly made their way into the roster of this game. And yeah, I'm cool with it. I think it's a great selection. You can build up your team the way you want to build it, and Yeah, it's the Galar region is pretty chill. I enjoy it. I enjoy the soundtrack. I enjoy the sounds of it. I enjoy exploring it. And, outside of the problems that I had with the game, the things that I really felt like could be improved, voice acting, more overworld Pokemon, like being able to have more of your Pokemon out in your team, just little stuff like that. Voice acting isn't so little, but it really, I really hope in a next sequel, and that might just be a bad hope on my part to have, that if there is another game, another generation of Pokemon that comes out on the Switch, I do hope that is something that is put into it. I think that would really add an aspect of character to the game, kind of bringing the story to life, making you feel more invested. Because as it is, the story is passable. It's nothing to write home about. And if these characters were voice acted, like you have to imagine them speaking with a British accent. I think it would be so much more fun if there were like British voices speaking. It would feel like Galar was like it was England. It would feel much more, or Scotland or whatever. Like it would feel much better influenced, and that impression would come off a lot nicer, I think. But overall, man, Pokemon Sword and Shield, my favorite Pokemon game in years. It's the first one I think I'm determined to beat. I'm enjoying it. You know, Pokemon is a series I've been very critical of over the years. I think this game is a step in the right direction. And yeah, overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Anyways, I'm Michael Muhammad. This has been my review of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you guys thought down in the comments.